Hello, I'm Timothy Linsdale, video producer, Christian, putting on my political hat today. I've come across this in the paper. A carbon nation is this question mark in the paper. It's a bipartisan group of lawmakers pushing a new act, which it may transform our economy, and maybe not for the better. It's the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. I've been searching the internet and looking through the newspaper on what this Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act is all about. I hadn't even heard of it. Now all of a sudden I'm reading it here in the paper, reading of it online, trying to understand it, and go forward from there. Let's see what the internet says here. The question is, should America institute a tax on main pollutant contributing to global warming? Now, of course, that main pollutant would be carbon dioxide. Now, I remember studying in school about carbon dioxide in plants. That plants use carbon dioxide to produce their fuel, their energy, their food. Use carbon dioxide. So there has to be carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Now, today's global warming proponents, if you will, that's not the right word, sorry, but those paying attention to global warming are very assured that increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is greatly increasing the temperature of the planet to the point of destroying our life here on Earth. And I've heard many arguments, read many arguments on the subject. But this bill here, here's what it does. The act would create a $15 tax per metric ton of carbon dioxide. And then the tax would be increased by $10 per year. So the hopes of many politicians that by the 2070, fossil fuels will be eliminated. Now, when they say those things, are they talking about worldwide or are they talking about the U.S.? They're usually talking about the U.S. Even though we have the cleanest manufacturing in the world, they still go after the U.S. As you may have seen and spoken to others who have traveled to China, India, and other areas of the world and that we have exported our manufacturing to, that they do not follow the same strict guidelines of clean energy production and use that we do. Now, since China and India constitute what? 2.5 billion at least people compared to our 330 million. So our smaller amount of effort here and energy is producing far less pollution. How are we going to affect the world's issue of global warming if it's just us making these changes? Now remember, a tax is usually not what it is proposed to be. And this tax will continue to grow on energy companies, which affects the price of everything. Everything that we have made and delivered is pretty much from fossil fuels. There are some replacements of wind and solar energy now, but not to the number they would like it to be. Now, of course, what they're doing through this tax is forcing everyone into non-fossil fuel energy. If you would give Americans time to figure out alternatives over time, to eliminate fossil fuels or greatly reduce them, if there are ways for them to make a profit and to make an honest living doing that, then that's what we should do, because that's what has solved all of our problems before. But when you force people by trying to tax them out of something, You have to create a bureaucracy for that tax to collect and disseminate. They're saying that they can give a dividend back to American families for the extra expense that it's going to cost to make these changes. Is there a good history to show that we've been given back a dividend that's equaling what we're paying in taxes? I question that. Also, you'd be driving some of the biggest businesses out of business in America. The companies that produce and mine and drill for the fossil fuels that support our economy, that run our economy. Everything that we have is hauled, manufactured, pretty much by fossil fuels, which means that if you increase the price of all of those fuels, will it not increase the price of everything? Okay, now they're saying they're going to give us a dividend to cover that, but it's also going to have a price above that. It's not just the cost of those fuels themselves, it's the cost of everything. Let's see what some supporters say here. They argue that the evidence for human-caused climate change is real and overwhelming, supported by scientists. The effects will be irreversible unless change occurs soon. And that a carbon tax is the best way. In other words, force the people to the will of these people. Is that not what is really happening here? Forcing their will on others. Opponents, they counter that a carbon tax would be stifling economically, especially when 62.9% of the U.S. energy production last year came from fossil fuels. That's according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. A carbon tax will mean that families and consumers will pay more, as I said, for everything. United States energy policy should encourage continued private sector innovation, should they not? You give people an opportunity to profit from this, they will find ways to do it. One of the great difficulties that supporters of such an act are going to say that if we don't do this, the earth is destroyed, we can't live on it anymore, and it'll be irreversible. There are also scientists who say it's not that detrimental, that our climate in the world is not that sensitive to carbon dioxide. Again, one could point to the fact that plants use carbon dioxide, and more plants would probably grow in the event of more carbon dioxide. So that's one way to consider it. Now, is this consensus of people really a consensus, or is it manufactured to force people to accept what a certain group wants? They want to force it on another group. And that's where we're at again, really. Some say this is a bipartisan bill. Is it? Some are saying it's the first bipartisan carbon tax bill in a decade. Technically true. Some say Democrats have introduced at least one carbon tax bill every Congress since 10 years. Meanwhile, 3 Republicans broke from their party to introduce a carbon tax bill in July, with no Democrats co-sponsored. That's interesting. However, calling this new legislation the first bipartisan carbon tax bill in a decade, while technically accurate, fails to indicate this remains almost entirely a Democratic priority in the present act. What are the odds of passage? Still, this could serve a template for Democrat legislation in the new Congress, which convenes, or has convened already. It will face nearly impossible odds getting it past a Republican Senate and a Republican president. So, there we are again. Another act that is deeply divided from one side or the other. Because one side believes the theory that is presented to them and the other side does not. So where are we? Nowhere. On it goes. So hopefully you got a little bit out of this about this act, that it actually exists. People are attempting to put the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act into place, saying that it would solve global warming by eliminating fossil fuels. It might have an attempt to eliminate fossil fuels in the U.S., but anywhere else in the world, I don't see it. So it leaves Americans trying to hold the bag for the rest of the world. And there we go. Well, anyway, like and comment on my video, subscribe to my channel, and go out and enjoy the sunshine and have a great day.